Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
For all you people who think that I'm just a meanie who only wants to hurt the Democrats, I actually did them a solid. I didn't talk about the bipartisan infrastructure bill because, as bad as it is, as long as the reconciliation bill is passed with it, you know, I didn't feel the urge to constantly be shitting on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I felt like we needed to put all our effort into getting the, you know, Build Back Better bill. But now that it looks like, you know, I'm going to be honest with you, chat. I was a leverage theory man. Which is the only reason why they were pressuring the progressives so hard to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill now is they know they won't be able to pass the reconciliation bill with anything like what they say is in it. Because if they were close to passing it, then they would just pass it, and then they would get both. Why would you need to whip votes if the reconciliation bill is largely going to pass as is? And the answer is they were lying. Congratulations. Welcome to politics. And, you know, the squad were the only Democrats who had the courage of their convictions to say, hey, the deal was vote for both or vote for none. And they voted for none. And, you know, the only way the squad could be owned, and the only way that I could be owned, would be if the reconciliation bill was passed with largely the same stuff as we're discussing, you know? So the only way that we could be owned, that's the only way we could be owned. Now, after this, so last week we had the Virginia election, was largely a disaster. Big swing toward the Republicans. Did you see the Cenk interview on Ro? No, I didn't. Let's watch
Joining me now, Representative Ro Khanna.
God, it's so long, but let's watch
He is in the middle of negotiations right now on the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill. Representative Khanna, welcome back to TYT.
Cenk, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time in the middle of this very hectic day. So I want to ask you first about the state of the negotiations. So in the beginning, as everybody knows, progressives had said that they had a red line, that the Senate must vote for the Build Back Better bill, the reconciliation bill first. Then the House would vote on the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan corporate-backed bill. Now that line has moved, and Representative Jayapal and yourself have said, no, the Senate doesn't have to vote for it. The House will vote for both. That kind of defeats the point. But now today, the latest developments are that apparently Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, is asking you guys to not even vote for it in the House, to have a vague promise that you might vote on it later, the bill that progressives actually want, the one that President Biden pretended to want, that you're going to get a vague promise on that. So you just came out of a meeting on this issue. Will progressives fold again and vote the way that Pelosi wants them to without even getting an assurance it'll pass in the House?
Well, Cenk, let me share what our perspective is. I don't think that progressives ever had a red line. What we had were priorities. We wanted to make sure there was robust climate. We wanted to make sure universal preschool. We wanted to make sure expansion of dental, vision, hearing. We wanted to make sure robust housing. We wanted to make sure childcare, free community college, paid family leave. Now, some of those priorities didn't make it in. The expansion of vision and
they're not in. None of them are in. None of them are in because you didn't pass anything. None of them are in. You have no leverage.
And hearing and dental, it's dubious. Free community college didn't make it in. Paid leave right now is on the bubble. But a lot of our priorities have made it in. The universal preschool, the child care, and actually a very, very robust climate bill. And it's in the framework. So our view is, how do we get this through? Now, no one is going to vote just on the infrastructure bill. What we're debating is whether a vote on the rule on Build Back Better is enough or not, and how do we move this forward? You have to understand there's there's some people who don't want anything. In my view.
Out them. Why don't they vote? Why don't they vote? So, Representative Khanna, you're saying I understand the proposal, the compromise on top of a compromise that Pelosi has proposed, which is that you vote on some nonsense rule about how you will vote later. But let's be super, super clear. You would, if this goes through, you would vote for the one that Republicans and corporate Democrats want, that corporations love, and you would not vote for the Build Back Better bill today. That's just a fact. That's what Pelosi wants. So is that going to happen or is it not going to happen?
We're pushing back. We want to have the bill both.
Wow, this is so disappointing because Ro is not okay. This. I got to be honest with you. Ro doesn't even have the courage to push back on Cenk here and say to Cenk what the truth is, which is, yeah, we're voting for the bipartisan infrastructure bill because Joe Biden's approval rating is cratering, and we need to have some sort of propaganda, some symbolic victory, so the media starts supporting us again. And we're scared of what would happen if Joe Biden's approval rating keeps going down. So we need to do something, anything. We're desperate. And the centrists aren't going to give in, so we are. That's the actual reality. I've been talking to some people, and they are whining about the progressives not going on independent media shows like yours. Do you think that's an actual concern? And would it help the progressive movement in a substantial way, or is that just people who are delusional? I think of that as like a medium-term investment. Like, if AOC comes on my show, then people who generically like AOC are going to find my show, and some percentage of them are going to start to watch me, and they're going to, use me as a source of the news as opposed to whatever they were watching before. And so whatever my views are, or the views of the program are going to get more power, going to get more sway, because AOC has created a feedback loop, a media environment that's slightly more favorable to her. And like TYT is an independent media, progressive independent media company, and Ro Khanna's on it right now. So it's not impossible to get these people on your shows. But I think it's a worthwhile project because the right wing does it, and it seems to be working quite well for them. So I don't know. I do think there's a certain level of self-servingness, though, in that statement. Like, consider the source, which is me. Obviously, if AOC and Ilhan Omar were coming on my show all the time, that would make me more money. That would make my show more valuable for me from a capitalist perspective. And so I am not unbiased here. Clearly I'm going to think that her helping me is going to help the progressive movement because it serves my interests. That said, I just look at the right wing and they seem very comfortable supporting and going on their independent media, their right-wing media. They try to build that stuff up as much as possible. So I think it would be nice if progressives did the same thing on our side. All right, let's keep going.
Votes today. That's what we're saying. We're saying that the 6 House Democrats, the conservative Democrats or moderate Democrats, whatever you want to call them, actually would vote yes if we.
Here's an idea, Ro. Why don't you guys sit down together in the progressive caucus and come up with some talking points? And you all decide to call them conservative Dems from now on. How about that? How about that? Show a little discipline.
We have both bills, and that's actually the negotiation taking place today. I probably disagree with you a little bit on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I think we need the Build Back Better on the climate part, but there are parts of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that are good, like getting broadband to rural communities and urban.
Actually, that's bad because of the way the bill does it. It doesn't do it in a leftist way. It does it in a actually conservative way, which is it doesn't force communities, doesn't force states to repeal their bans on municipal broadband and government broadband. So this is actually, in fact, a massive giveaway to large ISPs like Comcast and Verizon. But I haven't gone through and shit on the Build Back Better bill, the bipartisan bill, because the reconciliation bill was more important. Now that we've just got the bipartisan bill, now, it's bad. I regret to inform you, it sucks.
Communities, lead pipe funding that Rashida Tlaib got in. So I think overall the bill is a good one.
It's only 1/3 the amount of money we need to replace lead pipes. I tweeted about this last night. Let me pull that up for you. That's why you got to follow me on Twitter, chat. It's important to note how microscopically small the cost of replacing every lead pipe is when compared to the size of the economy. If AOC's estimate of $45 billion is accurate, and the investment is over 10 years as it is in the BBB bill, that represents just 0.015% of GDP. In other words, a microscopically small investment of our national output to replace all lead pipes. Why the f do we have any lead pipes in America? Here, let me show you this AOC thread. Responses. Okay, so this is why I saw it. I saw Sean tweet this. Responses to this tweet are amazing. A subset of Democratic voters would be perfectly happy if Biden pledged to replace a single lead pipe chosen via raffle because it's better to get something rather than nothing or whatever. Okay, let's look at this Twitter thread. The cost to replace every lead pipe in the United States is 45 to 60 billion. Bipartisan infrastructure only gives. Okay, I said it's the bib. I should have said biff. It's the biff, not the bib. BIF only gives 15 billion. Without BBB, many communities historically denied clean water will continue to be denied. That is such an incredible statement. That is an incredible statement. Clean water, if you look at it in isolation, takes a lot of investment and engineering and effort. But if you look at it from the perspective of the United States of America, the biggest economy in the world, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's pathetic. Build Back Better has led money for disadvantaged communities. We must keep pushing for the Build Back Better. I want to protect our party from disappointment and collapse and turnout from communities like mine that occurs when we tell them we did things we didn't do. We shouldn't promise all lead pipes will be fixed if that is not the case. Some will, most won't. We must push for BBB, the Build Back Better bill. It's not just that we made these promises before. Look how the infra bill is being messaged now. I respect the president and the legislative feat he just accomplished, but this is simply wrong. We do not fund the replacement of every child's pipe, and we shouldn't tell people we did. We're finally, this is what Biden tweeted, we're finally going to get rid of our nation's dangerous lead pipes thanks to this infrastructure bill. Every kid in this country will be able to turn on the tap and drink clean water. Absolutely not true, because we also shut down water if somebody gets behind on the bill. If some child's parent gets behind on the bill, we shut off their water. What are you talking about? This is not even true. We can and we should message BIF as a step, but messaging it as a solution alone is going to get us into trouble. BBB contains the majority of the president's agenda. We must keep going and ensure the promises are delivered. Okay, but what does $0 do? If you want to know why America is a shithole, Lexi Lazar is the reason. This person is why America is a shithole. Because you don't know how to fight, you loser. You pathetic loser. Americans have contempt for Democrats because they're losers who can't get anything done. And that's the way they're designed to be. If you actually saw all lead pipes get replaced in this country and the president could walk up and say, not one child will have lead poisoning in America at the end of my term, and you actually delivered, or we're going to eliminate every single case of lead poisoning we possibly can in America. Not one child will be poisoned from their water system. You make actual bold promises, and then here's the hard part: you deliver on the promise. They don't even bother malting in the record time. No, I'm just disgusted. It's an overdue project. It's enough to start.
But my bigger concern is it's not sufficient. We have to have the entirety of the agenda for working class, and that's why we've been pushing so hard to have the vote on Build Back Better.
Okay, so
can you explain the two different bills? Yeah, sure. We've been doing that for a while, on the stream, a couple months, but we'll keep trying.
I'm just going to ask it bluntly: are you guys going to fold or not? Because you said that you needed the Senate vote. You have to acknowledge you did not get that. You have retracted your position. That is clearly losing in negotiations, clearly. Now they're saying, well, since you guys can be pressured into anything, we'll bully you further into this nonsense rule vote. You explained on CNN why it's nonsense. You explained it. You said, and you did a great job in explaining it. You said, well, why do we need the Congressional Budget Office to rule on this? Several different entities have already ruled on what it would be. So it is clearly them saying to you guys, we don't think you'll ever stand up for anything. So are you progressives going to stand up and say, no, we will not listen to leadership bully us into submission, or are they going to say, yes, we submit?
Well, let me just say, we stood up twice, right? Twice they tried to have a vote on the infrastructure bill, and we didn't. We said, no, we wanted a framework, and the agreement.
Listen. I didn't win the boxing round match, but I did fight 3 rounds, okay? I could have gotten knocked out in the first round, but I made it to round 3. That's almost like winning, right, chat? That's almost like winning the fight. If you make it to round 3, it's almost like you won.
We struck is when the president has a framework, we would support the framework. And I think it's important for progressives. I know there's disagreement out there, but I'm a straight shooter. I think there are a lot of progressive things in the framework. I know people focus on what's not in there, but universal preschool.
The framework is not a bill. It's not a bill passed through the Senate, passed through the House, on the president's desk. It's just bullshit. But the bipartisan infrastructure bill is now on Biden's desk. The framework isn't. You're comparing apples to oranges. I'll say it another way. The Build Back Better framework is about as important as AOC's Green New Deal resolution when it comes to making law.
Childcare, the fact that we have huge climate, including a methane tax at $500 billion, that's not spin. That's actually good policy.
But look, Ro, you didn't. But you got it. Look, let's just do one thing at a time. You guys said that you would not vote in the House until the Senate passed Build Back Better. You're now saying, no, we withdraw our position. You have to say that's true, because it is true, right?
Well, there was a disagreement. There were different opinions, but certainly our chair, Pamela Jayapal, said initially, I don't know how she framed it, that we want some ironclad.
I can read a New York Times quote for you. Progressive Democrats warned the House leadership that a majority of their members will withhold their support for a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a second, far larger package containing their spending priorities. That's a fact. So
yeah, but the challenge is if we really were to hold to that, we'd have nothing. I mean,
okay. If the centrists want to torpedo everything, then torpedo everything. Why give them just what they want? Why vote for you ever? Joe Biden can't afford for nothing to pass, so hold his feet to the fire and get both passed. Exactly.
You really would then, the president's agenda would not happen and we'd move on to the next issue.
But hold on, Representative Khanna.
Okay, wait a minute. You just said they're going to pass the bipartisan infrastructure. Wait. Ro, you just said they're going to pass the BBB bill, the Build Back Better Act, later. Now you're admitting if you block the infrastructure bill, they'd pass nothing ever? How's that work? So I guess he knows that the promise about the Build Back Better bill being a lie is he knows that. He knows it's a lie. The framework is a joke.
That's of course not true, right? So you wouldn't have it yet. Hold on, you wouldn't have it yet. And then what would happen next is pressure would then go back to Manchin and Sinema, and they would say, well, the progressives are holding the line. And they're doing the same exact thing that Manchin and Sinema are doing. Manchin and Sinema are drawing red lines all over you guys. They're saying, I'm not going to do any of these things.
The difference is I think Manchin and Sinema would be perfectly fine if nothing happens. I think they'd be fine, okay?
Well, because they're called a poker face. It's called a poker face. Have you not played poker before? Did it peak there, chat? Did I peak? I'm sorry. Did the mic peak? I apologize. This is what happens in poker. If one party is convinced that the other person will only bet when they've got the goods, then you bluff like crazy. If every time you bet, the other player goes, well, he always has it, and folds, you should bluff like crazy. The only way you could stop people from bluffing is if you call quite a bit. And the reality is, the math is that you don't have to call that much to make bluffing very unprofitable for your opponent. You just have to pick some decent bluff catcher hands, a certain percentage of your range. I'm sorry, I'm explaining game theory. Ro, please learn it. Please read something. Please, once. Just once. If Manchin and Sinema want nothing to pass, and they're fine with Joe Biden's presidency being destroyed, then we go back and we primary Sinema, and Manchin's going to be out of office in a couple years anyway. And we build off from that. If they really need to be comfortable with getting nothing in order for our threats to have any meaning. I'll give you an example, Chad. If a union goes on strike and they get offered a contract and the contract isn't good enough, if you just sign the contract, if your leadership says, well, they might not offer us any contract. Yes, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But you need to know who has leverage and when. Are these progressives going to lose their seats? Who's the scared one of losing the seats? The progressives?
But Representative Khanna, I understand what you're saying, because they don't mind if these bills don't pass because they don't care about the country. They don't care about their voters. I understand the voters of West Virginia and Arizona are super clear. They want both of these bills. Yeah, there's no. I am going that far. I'm going that far. They definitely are against their own voters, and they're doing it for the donor money. Everybody knows this, Representative Khanna. Everybody. Are you guys ever going to say it? And the reason why I say that, Representative Khanna, is because if you don't say it, then you're right. Then Manchin and Sinema have no downside. They could bury every bill that would help the voters of their states, and they can cash in on it, as Sinema has. She's collected over about $1 million from drug companies because she's corrupt. And so the only way that you guys can get leverage is to say, one, we're holding up the infrastructure bill, which now you guys say you are not going to, so they will steamroll you. And number two, the second thing you could say is, okay, here's our leverage. You guys are corrupt. We're going to call out every single one of your donors. We're going to humiliate you, because you should be humiliated because you destroyed the Democratic agenda and you did it for your donors. Now, wouldn't that have an impact, Representative Khanna?
So here's the reality. Cenk wants the Democratic Civil War. And the reality is, when Bernie Sanders lost the primary, the urge and the desire for a Democratic Civil War fell. Why? Because progressives don't want a civil war. Progressives don't want to fight. They're not mad enough. And centrists and corporatists have the power. They've got something to lose. So they're going to fight. And the moment that American politics will change is the moment when left-wing politicians are angry enough that they feel like they've got nothing to lose. And unfortunately, we don't have many of those kind of representatives in Congress. We got a lot of people that support really great policies, and they're overall pretty nice people. And I like them, right? But we don't have actually angry leftists. There is very few of those people in Congress. I would actually say zero, if I was being honest. I think that people like AOC and Ilhan Omar should be considered the nice leftists. And they're the toughest that we've got right now. And that is bleak. Cori Bush is nice. AOC is nice. That's the reality. And so, and the fear of God has been put in the progressives. And I don't know how to get out of it. I really don't.
Well, the question is, how are you going to get there?
So you're saying we need old school pipe hitting Union boy lefties back? Yeah, I am saying that. I am.
Their votes. I actually don't think that would get their votes.
Oh yeah,
that
would
just.
Yeah,
I agree with Ro that it wouldn't get their votes. It would destroy everything. If the progressives declared war on Sinema and Manchin and started attacking them constantly, then the media stories would be progressives, Democrats civil war, Democrats that disagree, progressives destroy Democratic unity, attack Manchin and Sinema. The media probably wouldn't even repeat the attacks. Like, the media would probably not even repeat the attacks. They would just point to the progressives as derailing President Biden's presidency and empowering conservatives. There would be more conservatives on the media networks commenting on Democratic disarray and laughing and going, these progressives are doing our job for us. I can already tell you what would happen. I can see it. because that's what I would do if I was the corporate media trying to shit on the progressives. That's how I would frame it. If I was a dishonest fraud like our media is, that is what you would do. You would just say progressives damage unity, progressives not team players. You have Republicans come on and say, we love the progressives. They're doing our jobs for us. Look at the voters in Virginia. They're rejecting those progressives. They're way too far left. And you never actually air the substantive things that the progressives are saying. This is where Cenk, for all his savviness and for all his anger, doesn't understand that the media, he still has some faith in the media to report things that are factually true. You need to move on from that, Cenk. You need to move on from that. But you also report that Manchin and Sinema voted against the BBB, just like even Normie asked SNL was making fun of them already. Exactly. Do you think the squad got approval for their no votes? Yes, they did.
Manchin's in a state that Trump carried by 40%.
But that state hates his position. That state loves paid family leave. It's in the polling. It's not disputable. That state loves lowering drug.
Well, the problem is we no longer we don't live in a country where people are voting for policies. I actually think that we may be in an all-time low of people voting for policies. This would be interesting social science that I don't know if you could even do it. People vote for identity now. That's it. They're not voting for policies, man. It's all about the cults of personality. Now, I pick the cults of personality of the people that I agree with on policy. That's my tactical play. I play up AOC and Bernie Sanders' cults of personality because I like their policies. And I give them passes because I like their policies. And that's my way of trying to manage this shit world that we live in. All right, let's keep going.
Prices, it's in the polling. It's not disputable. The only thing is nobody in the state knows that he's betraying them because you guys won't say it. The threat of saying it could get him to move. It's called hardball. If you say it's not going to move and they're going to kill it anyway, well, then say, okay, there's going to be consequences for you guys. Otherwise, do you see that you guys can never win if you don't actually play hardball with these guys? Because then they're going to steamroll you. Here, I'll ask you another question. If you say, even if you got the best case scenario, Ro, and you said, okay, look, we'll leave Pelosi that we're going to vote later in the House and build back better.
And by the way, we're pushing back on that, so this is an ongoing negotiation. I mean, but I'm just being
okay. I hear you.
We're pushing for the 2 votes, so let's see how it turns out.
But let's say that she actually meant it, which I think it's all right. Let's say she means it, okay? And you guys actually do pass it in the House. Then it goes over to the Senate. Now, remember, Joe Manchin said that he gives you no promise at all that he's going to vote yes. Right. So then he turns around and goes, well, I'm not gonna vote for it. I didn't promise you that I'd vote for it, so it's dead. You voted for my bill, you're a sucker. I'm not voting for your bill. I told you I wasn't gonna vote for your bill. What do you say? I
don't think that because the president has said that he will deliver those 50 votes, and I don't think Manchin will tank the Biden presidency. Okay. Just like he voted for the American Republic. I think a bigger risk is that they will dilute what we pass in the House and take stuff out. But I do think it will eventually pass. But I agree with you that the risk is how much further will the dilution be of that bill?
So Representative Khanna, those are great points. Let's talk about those one at a time. Once you pass the bill that Manchin and Sinema want in the House, you have zero leverage. So now that you have zero leverage, especially because you guys are not willing to threaten their reputation.
No, I'm not convinced that Manchin and Sinema.
By the way, I just want to point out that they don't have zero leverage because next year is coming up very soon. You know, like as much as everybody wants to doom out, they still have next year. Democrats need progressives to pass a budget. Democrats need progressives to do shit. There's going to be new leverage points that pop up because welcome to Congress. Nothing ever ends. It's called the Congress. The point of the Congress is that they're constantly doing shit. They always have to be doing shit. They do stuff every year, constantly. They have to. So the question is, are progressives gonna learn any lessons from this defeat?
Or that much, let's get the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. Certainly Manchin. I mean, I think part of it is just let's not spend money. So I'm not convinced we have that much leverage that he really, really wants the infrastructure bill.
Wait, what? You think corporate America doesn't suck at the teat of the US state? We gave them infinite money, and they need it.
But that's a
okay. All right,
separate
but whatever little leverage that is, would it instantly disappear? So if you have the vote today or you have it a week from now in the House, it doesn't really matter because either way, your leverage is gone in the Senate. So that's point one. And point two, you say, and every Democrat in the House, and the progressives, as everybody knows, I'm a progressive. I'm fans of the progressive legislators. You've been on our show many times. You've been incredibly generous with it. You've been honest. We appreciate all that. But since you guys are not willing to threaten outing their donors, there goes the second piece of leverage. So you have absolutely no leverage and you have no promise from Manchin. So I'm asking you if you're right. Wouldn't you be right that then Manchin could eviscerate the Build Back Better bill and go, well, I didn't tell you I wasn't going to eviscerate it, and you knew I was going to eviscerate it, so I did. I took out every popular provision there is because my donors didn't want it.
I don't believe he will do that because he would then have made a commitment to the president that was false. Now you're saying theoretically, is it possible that he could eviscerate it? Yes, I don't. I believe it would stay around the 1.75 number. Where I'm most concerned is there going to be a dilution on the methane fee? Is there going to be a dilution on some of the climate provisions? And how much is the revenue going to tax the wealthy? Yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to continue to push, but I think we have to push through the White House. And the president has a huge interest in getting Build Back Better because it's popular, because he knows that he needs this for the midterms and for 2024. And if it's diluted, it's going to depress the base in 2022 and 2024.
He doesn't care about that. He's not even he's barely a Democrat. So Representative Khanna, look, this is an important news point in the question here, because you're saying that Biden has some sort of implicit promise from Manchin and presumably Sinema that they're going to vote for this version of the bill with 1.75.
The framework.
The framework, whatever that means. And Manchin is saying, no, I'm not giving any promises. So what's actually happening here? Does Biden have Manchin and Sinema's promise, or doesn't he?
I think publicly Manchin doesn't want to make those commitments, but our belief is that the president has a private commitment from 50 senators that he can pass this, and that he didn't come to us for many, many months, and he only came to the progressives once he had that commitment. I personally believe that he will pass the Build Back Better agenda, that Manchin ultimately will be a yes vote. But I acknowledge that the most popular provision in this was the Bernie Sanders increase dental, vision, hearing, and dental and vision are out. So I grant you that the bill has lost popular provisions that it should have. It should have a much more robust prescription drug negotiation. It should tax the billionaires and the corporations. It's not raising corporate tax rates because of Senator Sinema. So I'm not here to sort of sugarcoat things. What I'm saying is that we have a moderate president. We didn't win with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. In light of that, he's adopted a lot of progressive policies like childcare, universal preschool, and most importantly, climate. And this is significant progress in light of the circumstances. And that's where the disagreement is. Among not just us, but amongst people who've been critical of the caucus.
So Representative Khanna, we're not even talking about the disagreement. I think that what remains of the bill is, I think the negotiations went terribly. We lost on incredibly popular provisions.
Give the bill? What grade would you give the current president's framework on an A to F in terms of progressive goals?
So, Representative Khanna.
So here's the problem. This is actually an important point. I think that needs to be discussed, which is the reason why we're all pissed off and we're not happy when there's really good things that are happening is because the filibuster exists. And everybody knows that the only things we're getting done are the things that happen in the reconciliation bill. And so, for example, if Joe Biden had a law and it was called the Universal Pre-K Act, like a functioning democracy, this is how functioning democracies work. In a functioning democracy, you would pass a universal pre-K law, and then it would go through the legislature, and then they would have a bill called the Universal Pre-K Law, and then that would fund universal pre-K. And then if we had the paid family and medical leave law, and that gave 12 weeks of paid leave, and they voted for that, and then that was a separate law, then we wouldn't have to be pissed off When you pass 5 good bills, you could celebrate each bill because everybody was voting on it. And then you could make legislative deals. Hey, Joe Manchin, you want this bill on infrastructure? Well, then we need your vote on this bill. You could do some horse trading. And once you pass that bill, then we'll bring up this bill. But we don't do that because we have to keep the filibuster. That means we need to shove 80 things into one bill. And every time you take a thing out, you piss off everybody who supported that thing. And so you get super pissed off and hateful of the reconciliation bill. Even if it has 10 things I like in it, we all hate it because guess what? You're only doing one bill. Congratulations, filibuster. This is another way that filibuster makes progressive change harder. Because what are you going to do? Like things getting taken out because you can vote on one bill a year? It's stupid. I think this is an underestimated part of why filibuster reconciliation is just so bad for the left. What are you going to join Sam Cedar and blaming the electorate? We had a chance to get a progressive president. We lost to a chemistry 101 skeleton. Because that's liberalism. Blaming the electorate is liberalism, and it's also incredibly short-sighted. The reason why do people believe things? Why do you speak English? Why do you speak English instead of Russian right now? Why do you speak English instead of Portuguese right now? Why do you speak English instead of Navajo? And people say, because I'm an American. And that's it exactly right. You speak English because you were taught English, and that's what you had to learn to function. There was a society and a system that put English in your brain as the way you communicate. Even when you think a thought in your mind, the words are in English. What, do you think English always existed? You have been programmed with with English. And so when voters believe that Joe Biden is the most electable, that isn't something they reasoned out on their own. They were programmed with that. They were taught that. You got to vote for Joe Biden because he's the best chance to beat Trump. And beating Trump is the most important thing. All of that is a programmed thought. That is not a thought they independently came up with. Are you aware the U.S. doesn't have a national language? Yes, I know that we don't have a formal national language, but our operative language and the language taught in every classroom is English. Unless you set up a special program. Find the parliamentarian, kill the filibuster, move policies, horse trade. None of that was done. It's devastating how inept the Democrats are pushing status quo changing policies, and looks like by design. You got it. And the reason why I cite the you speak English is if you're an American or you're in an English-speaking country, you speak English because that's what you were taught, and that's the system that you were brought up in. And just blaming the voters is a total lack of understanding. Yeah, the voters had an option to vote for a better thing, and a hell of a lot of them did. A hell of a lot of them did. But a lot of why we get the results we get is because it's an intentional design and effort. And just pointing the finger back at the voters is going to cause you to make bad mistakes when it comes to strategy in the future. You've got to look at ways of changing the systems, changing the flows of information, disrupting that programming that's going on.
Grant you that there are parts of the bill that are positive. There's still $550 billion for climate change until Manchin eviscerates it in the Senate and gets rid of it. But okay, for now, in the $1.75 trillion provision, yes, there are some good provisions, including universal pre-K, which, by the way, corporations love because they want to get everybody back to work. So everything that's currently in the bill has basically been approved by corporate donors. Now, that doesn't mean they're all bad. There's some things like universal pre-K that the corporations have allowed us to have because it also benefits them. Are they not merciful? So it's not 100% loss in terms of the bill itself. But
apparently I had typoed caucus the whole time.
In terms of the negotiations, would you then grant to me that if the negotiations were between 1.5 trillion and 3.5 trillion, and in our best case scenario, we're at 1.75 trillion, and we're not even guaranteed to get that, then you guys have lost the negotiations?
Well, no, because Manchin started out at zero. I mean,
okay, we started out at 6 trillion. Then okay, then let's meet back at 3.
But we have a case where we have a 50-50 Senate and 200 and.
By the way,
so in other words, So in other words, the centrists felt more secure that they could stand in front of popular opinion. They could stand against 48 other senators and get you guys to come 80% their way. Do you not understand why that's... If there's 50 senators, how come Bernie Sanders is not a no? Right? Bernie Sanders is a senator, just like Joe Manchin's a senator. And the answer is that Joe Manchin is willing to move a lot less than Bernie is. That's it. That's it. Bernie's willing to move more than Joe Manchin is willing to move. Now, maybe if Bernie Sanders wasn't willing to move more, then we would get no bill, right? Say Joe Manchin really will only vote for between 0 and 2 trillion, right? Bernie Sanders wants to spend infinite. Let's just have that as a hypothetical. So what Bernie Sanders needs to do is find the exact maximum that Joe Manchin would ever vote for. That's his goal. Because there's no amount of money that Joe Manchin could offer that Bernie Sanders wouldn't say yes to. So the goal for Bernie Sanders is to find whatever Joe Biden's actual maximum is. And I don't think that he's got a principled limit. There's no principled limit to Joe Manchin's maximum number. It's made up.
But Representative Khanna, you have 3 House Democrats that could block any bill. So they're 50-50, you're nearly 50-50. Why won't...
The difference is they have an advantage because the status quo is fine for them. If everything blows up, if Joe Biden doesn't accomplish a single thing, there are a lot of people who will be fine with that. We want to move progress. So maybe you could say
Representative Khanna, that is true. That is true. That is true. Okay, but that is why we say your only leverage is to shame them publicly. Look here. Let's take one example, and then you've been very generous with your time. Okay, so paid family leave has an 88% popular. I'm sorry, that it has about a 3/4 popularity. Lowering drug prices, the specific provision to lower drug prices has an 88% popularity. 9 out of 10 Americans, including about the same number in West Virginia and Arizona, to be absolutely clear. Okay, so what you could do is say, why isn't Manchin and Sinema in favor of lowering drug prices? Why are they against 9 out of 10? Americans? And everybody knows the answer to that. It's because they're being bribed. It's legal bribes in the form of campaign donations, but it is bribes nonetheless. If you said that, of course they would catch feelings and you would be...
Okay, well, here's the thing. This is the point. So Cenk is right, but here's what Cenk is missing. You want to know how the popular reaction would go on that situation? It depends on what the Democratic Party and Joe Biden did. If Joe Biden came out and signaled to all his allies that he was going to make Kyrsten Sinema persona non grata and that he was going to label her as not a team player and a Democrat in name only, if he did what Donald Trump does, this is where Donald Trump is a better leader than Joe Biden about politics. Donald Trump goes around and he says, any Republican who's against me is against the Republican Party. And I don't like that because what Donald Trump wants to do is shit. It's bad. But what he understands better than seemingly every left-wing politician is that if you make their policy position a position against the party, they're fucked. And Donald Trump uses that for authoritarian fascist ends, or for example, overturn the election I lost. But Joe Biden won't even do it for good things that 90% of people support. That's a good policy. He won't make it opposing it about opposing the party. And so they get a pass because Joe Biden won't label them as a problem. And as we talked about earlier, people vote on identity. That's why people are going to get more mad at the progressives for voting against this bill than they are for the centrists for blocking it for so long. Because AOC and Ilhan Omar and the squad are going to be labeled as not team players. And that's going to be the way the centrists attack them. And for a long time during this negotiation, the progressives had the upper hand. For the first time in my life, the progressives had the upper hand for a while. They had the upper hand for a while. And they almost executed it, which is they were making everybody hate Kyrsten Sinema. and hate Joe Manchin and absolutely pissed at them that they weren't passing Joe Biden's agenda. But now they fucked it up. Joe Biden is so fucking clueless and stupid. He called Rashida Tlaib's mom in India to pressure and bully her into coercing Tlaib's vote when Tlaib was already a yes on the condition that both bills pass. Biden should have called up and banged both Sinema and Manchin's mom just to bully and embarrass them. The fishhook theory and mother-loving act. Wait, is that actually true? Did Biden really call Rashida Tlaib's mom? Are you just making that up? Is this a thing? Like, what are you talking about? Is that a joke? Was it a Jayapal's mom? Maybe it's Jayapal mom. Can you link me that story? I missed it.
Be persona non grata on Capitol Hill. You've offended the elites. But it is absolutely true, and it would get a lot of press attention to the fact that
No, it wouldn't. It would only get press attention if Joe Biden endorses it. That's what Here's what separates Joe Biden from LBJ or FDR. LBJ and FDR and Donald Trump understand one thing. They are the party. And I think Obama knew this, but he knew it for centrist reasons. What separates LBJ and FDR and Trump from people like Joe Biden is that they understand that when you think of the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party, when they hold the White House, you think of the president. You're not thinking of an independent organization called the Democratic Party made up of hundreds of millions of people or tens of millions of people. You're thinking about the guy in charge of that party. And so if you're a Democratic politician and you go against your president, the only way that people will actually turn against you is if that president comes out and says it. That's what the bully pulpit means. The bully pulpit means I am the leader of my party and I can discipline anyone in my party who doesn't toe the line because I can point my finger and say, hey, you like me? I'm the president. Everybody knows the president. Well, your representative sucks. That representative is going to shit their pants. And Joe Biden is not willing to use the bully pulpit. He's not willing to use the bully pulpit, so he gets bullied himself. And that's why he's a loser.
They're corrupt, and that would hurt their reputation, the only thing they care about.
I don't think that's the way to make progress and get the vote. I mean, there's a reason Senator Sanders, who's worked with them and no one can question his integrity, chooses to make it about ideas and doesn't choose to sort of make
you're giving away leverage.
That's just, but it's ridiculous. What idea are they representing? What idea are they representing? What the pharmaceutical company lobbyists say? That's not an idea. That's a bribe.
You're giving away leverage. Representative Khanna, it isn't about that hey, we're not issuing ideas. We are in favor of ideas. We're in favor of the idea of lower drug prices. The only people who are against lower drug prices are drug companies. They're giving millions of dollars to Manchin.
Thank you, Cenk. Cenk is exactly right. Jesus Christ.
No, man, I get you're saying in the middle of negotiations, you don't want to blast them with a nuclear level attack publicly. But if you care about those ideas and you care about those policies and you know you have a winning hand, wouldn't you behind the scenes at least threaten that? And it's obvious that you guys are not threatening that because they're walking around free as a daisy. They don't have any concern at all. And progressives have never shamed corporate Democrats, have never challenged corporate Democrats, and that's why they steamroll us. Isn't all of that fairly obvious?
Well, I co-chaired, as you know, Bernie Sanders' campaign, which every speech was about the hold that the pharmaceutical industry, Wall Street, big corporations have on American politics. He's spoken out. He may not personalize it, but he's spoken about it.
But if you don't personalize it, you have no leverage. If you don't personalize it, you have no leverage at all. And Representative Khanna, the mainstream press hates progressives. So every time an election is lost,
things are changing. They're not as
really. I just saw your interview with Jake Tapper. It was the most conservative hatchet job I've ever seen. He blamed you for not passing the bill when Manchin and Sinema are the ones who have prevented us from passing it for months and months and months. And then they run McAuliffe, the worst conservative Democrat in the party, and then they blame the left for losing the election. That's insane. When are you guys going to fight back?
I understand that the progressive movement, wants us to be tougher, wants the caucus to be bolder. I get it. I read the Twitter threads here or there. I mean, I see the criticism. Here's what I would say to them. First, be proud of at least 2 times where we took a stand.
Oh my God, bro. Come on. Bro, come on. What is this? Are you the Washington Generals? Come on, man. Although that reference is becoming a boomer reference. Well, look, we played a good 2 quarters.
Stood up and didn't have the infrastructure vote, and look at all of the progressive policies we've gotten in there. And then the second thing I'd say is keep building, keep running,
we're tired
keep challenging incumbents, keep building seats, keep building progressive power.
I mean, I agree with, okay, first of all, I agree with that, of course. But my problem is, if we get more Ro Khannas, we're not going to make progress. We're not going to win every single seat. We're not going to get every single corporate dem. Some local machines are going to win. Corporate money is going to have a hold on the Democratic Party for the foreseeable future because we lost the Supreme Court and Citizens United is the law of the land. And super PACs and corporate money are going to flood. And they're getting more and more wealth. I mean, I got to be honest with you, chat. In my darkest hour, I think about somebody like Elon Musk running for president as a Republican or an independent and just dropping $50 billion on the race. And just like, we could have just a full-on oligarchy. He would lose. Maybe he would. Maybe he's not the best example, but the amount of money we're talking about dwarfs what normal political spending is.
If you want a progressive movement, it's not going to happen overnight. And be critical of us where you think.
Bloomberg tried that, but Bloomberg has zero charisma, man. Bloomberg sucks. But Bloomberg was still able to become New York City's mayor for multiple terms. And he did it late. Bloomberg jumped in late. And Bloomberg has negative charisma. As much as I hate Elon Musk, he has nerd charisma. And Bloomberg has none.
You keep pushing us, but there are what we're trying to do is maximize what we can achieve in a system where we have a moderate Democratic president, self-described moderate, where we have a 50-50 Senate, and where we have fairly moderates in House leadership. So help us continue to build.
So let me be clear about the facts. Representative Khanna is right that 2 different times Progressive Caucus did stand up, and corporate Democrats had to retreat. Now, unfortunately, at the end, when you give them what they want, they still won. That's also a fact. Those are both true. So, of course, the end is what matters most, but it is true. And I want you guys to understand, I'm not saying this because he's on. We don't care about access journalism. We don't care about it if no one comes out, okay? Representative Khanna has been consistently the most honest and the bravest. And he's the only one that will come on progressive media to discuss these issues and to have a frank conversation. We've asked everyone, you see Representative Khanna, you don't see the others. So tremendous credit there, okay? But Representative Khanna, I've got to say at the end, we need, the progressive base and progressive media needs you guys in Congress to understand. It isn't that we're venting. It isn't about passion. It isn't about emotion. It's about strategy. And if you don't have leverage on the corporate Democrats, and you never will in appealing to their principles or their voters. They don't care about principles. They don't care about their voters. This bill proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt. These bills are incredibly popular in West Virginia, Arizona, and I challenge every corporate media hack out there that watches this interview. Do your math. Do your job, look at the polling, report the polling, report what the people of West Virginia and Arizona and the whole country actually believe. Stop lying about what the people of America want. They want this bill. Representative Khanna is right that they want this bill. So finally, Representative Khanna, do you get that if we're asking you to fight back against the corporate Democrats because of leverage, that's the only way that you can out the corruption and why they're voting no? It is so important. If you put a spotlight on why they're voting no, then it gets people to ask Manchin and Sinema. Hey, we did a story. Manchin made $5 million from his coal company. That's a fact. That's on TYT.com, but you could go check it anywhere. And he has another $5 million in wealth in his coal company. How is that not relevant? And that's on top of the campaign contributions. Okay, so just the actual question was, do you get that that's leverage and it's strategy It's not just to vent, that there is a purpose behind it, and we could use that purpose to actually pass the policy.
I believe, Cenk, that there are different roles for different people in a democracy. I believe that the role of progressive legislators is to help mobilize, but then also to figure out how we get things done. I think that there's a role for independent media. I think there's a role for mobilization. I think there's a role, as you know, I've always supported primary challenges, and there's a role certainly in Arizona where you have a Democratic state and a senator who's voting differently than Mark Kelly for us to.
I mean, I will say this. I do respect Ro Khanna's willingness come on and be plain spoken about what the feeling is and the frustration I feel. I don't want you to target this at Ro Khanna. You should target this at all the progressives who didn't come out on the media and talk about it. And I'm not talking about the big names you know. I'm talking about the names you don't know. There's 435 congresspeople. How many of those names do you know? We need to expose these backbencher Democrats that are in safe Democratic seats and start primarying people.
To have mobilization. So I believe what I don't want to have happen, and let me end with this, is this kind of sense, well, it doesn't matter. We got these Justice Democrats in there. We got AOC, we got Ilhan, we got Rashida, we got Pramila, we got a bunch of folks in, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, and nothing is changing. And, you know, we had Bernie Sanders' energy and let's just leave. Look at how far we've come from 2016 to now. Look at the fact that what has become the center of the Democratic Party. Is it perfect? No. Is the progress fast enough? No. But if we can do this in 5 years, think about the next 10. And the worst thing, I'd rather people beat up on me, criticize me, just don't disengage. Keep winning races, keep building. I'm confident eventually we'll get a progressive president, progressive leaders, and that's what will allow for the real change.
All right, we'll leave it at that, and I'll give you one last piece of context for the audience that corporate media doesn't do. Representative Khanna was the first person to say that he would join Justice Democrats when he knew that it would involve primarying Democratic incumbents. That was an incredibly brave decision, and so that has defined him. And you should know that context here, even if you're frustrated with his positions today, if you are, right? And he just laid out a case for why you shouldn't be, and you should be excited about the future. So
the problem is that if the progressives were out there slinging mud left and right and calling names, Biden the Dem leadership would turn on them. That's exactly what I said. This is why getting a progressive president is so important, because the party is about the president. And here's what we know, though, is that the centrists are ideologues. The most ideological people in our politics today are the centrists. They are the most extreme ideologues, is the centrists in this country. Every other, even right-wingers, are less ideological than our centrists. Like, look at the way they do the policies. They are trying to avoid any non-market-based policy. Every policy has to be a market-based policy. Even if it's more expensive, less effective, they don't care about the evidence. Everything has to be market-based. Everything has to be a credit. Everything has to be means-tested. It's just so bad.
Representative Khanna, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Live chat
emoji. Right, well, that was a really, really, really good interview. That sucked up an hour and a half of our stream.